Welcome to the Explainer. So if you're a focused learner trying to figure out the mechanics, the myths, and the realities of feline health, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're diving straight into the messy, widely misunderstood biological realities of living with cats. We're going past the surface here to understand a surprisingly complex issue that millions of pet owners face and, honestly, mostly ignore. Okay, let's start by confronting a massive, culturally accepted myth right head on. Cats puke, that is what they do. I mean, how many times have we heard this? If you grew up around cats, it's practically a family motto, right? For years, people have just accepted that a cat throwing up is just a normal, everyday part of owning a pet. We just assume, oh, it's a hairball or maybe a minor upset stomach. But as we're going to see, accepting this as some universal truth is actually masking a much deeper and sometimes way more dangerous reality. And there's this one story that just brilliantly illustrates what happens when that myth finally gets shattered. Picture this timeline. You got an owner who literally watched their cat vomit weekly for 3 entire years. 3 years. It barely even registered as a problem for them. Then, during a routine annual checkup, they kind of just casually mentioned it to their vet, almost as an afterthought. Well, that one vet visit was the wake-up call. The vet explains that actually a healthy cat shouldn't be throwing up weekly. Fast forward just 3 weeks later, and simply by switching to a slow feeder and spacing out smaller meals, the vomiting dropped to maybe once a month. The cat was suddenly vastly more energetic. What was thought to be a 3-year, completely normal biological quirk was totally fixed in 3 weeks with a few simple habit changes. It's wild. Which brings us to section 1, same puddle, different problems. So let's look past that ordinary, everyday puddle on the floor to uncover the vast and sometimes terrifying range of issues it actually represents. Because once we stop accepting the mess as normal, we can make a really crucial distinction. To us, the disgusting mess on the carpet looks exactly the same, right? But biologically, we are talking about 2 completely different mechanisms. On one hand, you have vomiting, which involves bringing up digested food, liquid, or bile. And on the other hand, we have regurgitation, that often looks like a cat simply inhaling their food way too fast and bringing up a literal tube of nearly intact kibble. The actual mechanism tells a totally different story about your cat's health, and confusing the two can send you down the completely wrong path.
It's actually fascinating how this breaks down the absolute messiness of the symptom, because the exact same visible puddle can stem from wildly different roots. Think about it. You've got medical causes, like hyperthyroidism or inflammatory bowel disease. Then you have dietary causes. Maybe it's a food intolerance or just that regurgitation we just talked about from eating too fast. And then, surprisingly, you have environmental causes. We're talking about cats throwing up simply because they're living with aggressive dogs or they're carrying anxiety from a previous hoarding situation. It's one symptom, but 3 entirely different categories of root causes.
Moving right into section 2, the heavy cost of misdiagnosis. We really have to address the emotional fallout here. Because when a symptom is this messy, misdiagnosis happens. And with that comes a tremendous amount of guilt and frustration from owners who miss the signs, or whose genuine concerns were just initially dismissed by professionals. There's this particularly painful story from the source material where an owner watched their cat vomit daily for months while rapidly losing weight. They did exactly what you're supposed to do. They told their vet, but the vet completely dismissed it, blaming it on the cat eating too fast. It wasn't until they sought a second opinion at another clinic that the cat was correctly diagnosed with hyperthyroidism. The cat was excessively hungry because of the illness, eating too fast, and then vomiting. That early dismissal cost months of misery, leaving the owner with this deep, lingering anger, even after the cat eventually passed away years later. But once you finally do get that correct diagnosis, like hyperthyroidism, you enter a whole new maze. Owners suddenly face this dizzying array of treatment options. You've got daily methimazole pills, liquid medications, or these transdermal creams you rub on the cat's ear. And then there are radioactive iodine injections. That involves overnight stays at specialist clinics and the incredibly strange, very practical reality of managing a temporarily radioactive animal inside your home. It's a massive leap from just a hairball, isn't it? And then there's the cost, $5,000. Let the sheer weight of that number hang for a second. That was the staggering bill for one owner whose 9-year-old cat turned out to be severely allergic to that methimazole medication. Imagine being in that scenario. The price is far beyond what feels affordable, but the cat is only 9 years old. It's exactly the kind of situation that takes a standard medical option and twists it into a devastating emotional trap for the owner. Okay, on to section 3, when fine is actually fine. Now, before we overshoot into absolute panic mode and assume every single time a cat gets sick it's a $5,000 emergency, let's explore the counter-narrative. Because sometimes a cat is simply a messy biological disaster and is actually totally fine. There are these examples that just perfectly capture the quirky, hilarious reality of pets. Some owners rushed their cats to the vet, did the full workup, spent the money, and got totally clear results. We've got an 11-year-old cat who suddenly vomited daily for a week, went to the vet, got a clean bill of health, came home, and immediately stopped. The owner joked he literally just wanted attention. Or what about an anxious cat who only throws up dry kibble if the owner isn't standing right nearby while they eat? One cat even figured out that eating a specific plant or just making really loud vomiting noises with rabbit hay would successfully wake the household up to accelerate breakfast time. They literally weaponized the symptom.
I absolutely love this empathetic comment from the discussion. Pet care changes, ideas change, and veterinary medicine evolves. It perfectly hits on that uncomfortable middle ground we have to live in as pet owners. We absolutely shouldn't panic and assume every single episode means cancer or some rare disease. But we also can't swing to the other extreme and dismiss repeated patterns. Context and patterns really matter.
Which leads us to Section 4, Unlearning Bad Pet Advice. So, if patterns matter, why do we keep ignoring the iceberg beneath the surface? Why does it take years for some people to realize something is actually wrong? Well, it mostly comes down to unlearning deeply ingrained bad advice. The owner from our very first story didn't just invent the belief that cats routinely vomit out of thin air, they inherited it. Hairballs and vomiting are so deeply culturally associated with cats in movies, TV shows, and family lore that repeated sickness just kind of disappears into the background noise. We put it in the exact same mental category as a cat scratching the side of the sofa or waking you up at dawn. It's just cats being cats.
And this invisible cycle breaks down with terrifying logic. First, a cat throws up. Second, the owner sighs, grabs a paper towel, and cleans it up. Third, a few hours later, the cat happily eats their dinner. And because of that, step 4, nothing appears urgent. Repeat the sequence for months, or if you've had cats since childhood, repeat it for decades. You can see exactly how good, totally well-meaning people genuinely do not know that the symptom is even worth reporting to a doctor. It just becomes invisible.
There's this specific detail from the source material that explains this communication gap better than any dramatic warning ever could. A veterinary technician noted that they actually have to deliberately and specifically ask clients about vomiting and hairballs during checkups. Why? Because owners routinely fail to bring it up themselves. They're not maliciously hiding symptoms or anything, they literally just don't realize these ordinary-looking episodes actually matter. The tech frames the question really lightly just to get the owners talking, and it ends up revealing medical histories that would have otherwise stayed totally hidden. The strongest, most impactful stories we've looked at today weren't actually about incredibly rare, exotic diseases. They were about the profound consequences, both tragic, like those late diagnoses, and deeply relieving, like finding out you just need a slow feeder bowl, of finally questioning a daily routine. In almost every single story, the puddle on the floor looked perfectly ordinary. It was only later, when someone finally asked why, that they learned what it really meant. So, I want to leave you with this final thought to wrap up today's explainer. The truly frightening part of all this isn't the fear that every single cat is secretly chronically sick. The truly frightening part is how incredibly easy it is for us to normalize the warning signs right in front of us. When a symptom becomes a cultural joke, it becomes invisible. So the next time you see something normal, ask yourself, why is it so easy to stop asking why? Thanks so much for diving into this with me. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the details, and we'll catch you in the next explainer.